Good morning and welcome to Guaranty RV Super Center's live stream. We call it G Live. My name is Marshall White. I am your host, and I'm also joined today by Dr. Q. Good morning, Quinn. He's my co-host.
Good morning, Marshall. Good to be here. Good morning, Internet. Thanks for joining us on a Wednesday.
He is literally the cool to my aid. And the reason I need aid is because I've not been doing this nearly as long as this guy who's been, 20 to 30 years worth of RV industry experience. And he's going to help us out today on our pre-trip checklist on this motorhome interior. Last week, in part one, we covered the exterior and all the things that we need to do from a safety standpoint, checking the tires, wiper fluid, and so forth before we hit the highway. Today, we're going to do it on the inside. Shall we head inside?
Yeah, I think it's a plan. After you, Marshall.
What a beautiful coach.
Yeah, very nice, right?
Let's grab the lights.
Even better with the lights on. So the first thing I do when I go pre-trip check is I'm going to turn on all my lights. Part of that is I want to make sure they're all working. The other part of that is I'm going to be working in here, so if I can see better, I'm going to notice any little imperfections, anything that needs a little touch-up, anything that needs a little repair. So we've got the lights on. The next step is I'm going to come on over here to my monitor panel. This monitor panel is going to tell me a whole lot about my coach and where it stands before we get ready. This monitor panel is going to allow me to test my LP. In this situation, we're inside, so that LP is empty. That's fire marshal at work there, but you've got indicator lights. It's going to tell you empty, third full. We're going to do the same with the batteries. Batteries are fully charged. That's good. A good way to start your trip. Fresh water is at 2/3. Black is empty, gray is empty. And that's probably how I would start. Water's pretty heavy. You don't need to necessarily transport a bunch of water with you. If you know where you're going has water, I would use their city water. Water's about 7 pounds a gallon, I think. So, some of these things have 40, 50-gallon tanks. That can be a lot of weight that you add to it. This is also for our water pump switch, and we would turn on our water heater here. We don't have LP, and having it on 110 without any water in it can damage them, so I'm just going to tell you about how that would work. If we have water in there, we would turn on the 110-volt element if we're plugged in or running the generator. Most of the time, you're going to run it on gas. Next thing I do is just make sure my water pump is working. I'm going to step behind you here, Marshall. Going to run a little water. Yep, and during this step, if I had that water heater on, I would also check for hot water. That's a good way to tell if your water heater is working. It takes a little while from initial startup to actually produce hot water, but it's a good time to check that versus on the road when you're taking a shower and you find out you don't have any hot water.
Makes sense.
Then we're going to move on to our appliances. I would have the air conditioner on. In this case, we'll just kick it over to the fan here, put it on fan. She comes on just fine. Turn that off. Save some power here. And then I'd move my way over to the stove. The reason I start with the stove is because I can light one of these burners. Sometimes you're going to need the stick lighter. Newer coaches almost always have a piezo ignition. And I'm going to light the high output burner. Obviously no propane, so I'm dummying it. The reason I light that first burner is so that I can actually kind of purge the system. It helps bring propane from the tank up into all of the lines. Occasionally you're going to wait a minute and you're going to get a little bit of a when you first start it. That's natural. That's just the nature of the beast. Propane, it would take a long time to fill this coach up with enough propane to be dangerous. And you have a detector in here somewhere that well before it gets to that level is going to tell you, hey, we've smelled a lot of propane.
Fantastic. Now, if I haven't used the coach in let's say a year or two, do I need to wait longer for the propane to reach the front burner? Because I've had the experience before where it's like I'm trying to light it, it just doesn't go. When do I finally give up and take it to a professional?
Well, the first thing to do is if it's taken a long time, make sure you haven't turned the valve off at the tank. Sometimes it's just you forgot. I turned this off for safety. Make sure that's on. If it takes more than a couple of minutes, 5 minutes to get that thing to light, you have an issue. But if it's been sitting in storage for a while, it may take a while for the propane to reach the burner. You'll kind of smell it also. They add a smell to propane. It smells sort of like a combination of garlic and skunk. So you can actually tell when it's in the environment. But it may take a little while, and when it does take a little while, you'll probably get that fun little flare, boom, but then it'll run normal. And once it's running normal, pretty much all your appliances are going to be fed with propane at that point.
Fantastic. You know, folks, if you also have suggestions for what's on your pre-trip checklist, we'd love to hear them today. Just chime in with those, and the rest of our listeners can maybe add to it and make suggestions. We could even feature your suggestion in our next live stream.
Good idea. Good idea. So I take a quick look at my microwave. We're going to set it for 10 seconds here. Give it a start. Oh, it's just the door. We need to close the door. Watching my turntable. That's working fine. I'd move over to my refrigerator next. This is a household refrigerator, so it's only going to take an hour or so to cool down. If you have an RV refrigerator, you really want to set that thing 12 to 24 hours before you start loading it with any food to get it down to its appropriate temperature.
Okay, now this is, again, Mr. Naive here, not having the experience you do. How do I tell the difference between the RV and the household refrigerator?
Well, name brand will tell you a lot of that. Basically, the RV refrigerators that use absorption technology, this is a compressor type for the home, they're going to have a Dometic or a Norcold brand on them. If you don't have a lot of industry experience, there's a pretty easy way to tell. If you look inside the refrigerator, in an RV refrigerator, on this back wall, you're going to have a bunch of metal fins. Those metal fins are actually absorbing the heat out of the box. That's why it's called an absorption refrigerator. And you'll find a metal plate in the freezer as well. So if you see metal, basically if you see metal in your refrigerator, it's an RV refrigerator. The nice part about an RV refrigerator is you can run it on gas going down the road. These are generally built into a vehicle that has an inverter. So there are some other accommodations for that. You have to make sure you got plenty of battery power. With an RV refrigerator, you want to leave a little bit of space all the way around your food so that air can travel. And the biggest thing you can do to help that refrigerator is to load cold food into it. It's going to have the ability to cool things down, but you're going to ask it to work really hard to cool itself and food. So if it's cold and you put cold food into it, it's going to work a lot better for you.
Fantastic advice. I like that a lot. Now, I had the experience 2 weekends ago where I was helping somebody with their RV, and they were boondocking. And, I was playing expert for a moment, and she was so upset because her refrigerator had come open during the trip, and her beverages had spilled out onto the floor, which is quite a mess. What I discovered is that it just wasn't seeming to latch properly. Have you seen that? Is that common? Or
it's relatively common. One of the things that we do, and I do it here and I do it at home, is you have a tendency to kind of pull down on the door when you look inside the refrigerator. Sometimes you can wear out a little bushing and the door doesn't sit right, might pop open on you. Sometimes the little travel latch has given up on you, and sometimes it's the way you load the refrigerator. In an RV refrigerator, you don't want to put all of your canned sodas or beverages of choice in the door. You want to put the lighter stuff into the door and the cans on the surface of the refrigerator, basically because it's always pushing against the latch, and the less weight pushing against the latch, the better.
If by chance you do run into problems with your refrigerator door, the Guaranty RV Travel Center has all the parts you could ever hope for, either in its store here in Junction City or online at guaranty.com/parts. And that can sometimes it's maybe probably a 25-cent bushing that can solve the door latch issue.
Yep, yeah. Sometimes the smallest parts make the biggest difference. So we're going to move on to the restroom here. So an RV has one of the nice parts about an RV is you bring your own restroom and your own bed with you wherever you go. That's kind of my favorite part. But there is some stuff you have to do to make the toilet work properly. We like the Happy Camper. It's an enzyme or bacteria based, so it's good for the environment. It's not formaldehyde based. Plenty safe. It's basically like your shock treatment for your septic at home, in essence. So then what we would do is we would take a jug of water. There's a little scoop in here. I would pour that scoop into this jug of water, shake that water vigorously until I get it good and mixed. And then you're going to actually open your toilet valve and dump it in and let a little water run behind it. You want about an inch of water at the base of the tank all the way across, so these guys have something to swim in. Otherwise, they're just sitting in a pile in the bottom, and they aren't going to do any good until you get enough liquid in there for them to populate the whole system.
Is that something I'm doing before I take off with my RV, or something I'm doing to store the RV?
Well, it kind of depends on how you like to do it. And either one is fine. If you do it when you store your RV, you do run the risk of having it in storage long enough that the water evaporates. But then these just go dormant. They don't die. You haven't ruined anything. You haven't wasted your chemical. Once you put water back into there, it'll kind of reactivate them. They'll come back to life. I usually do it before I take off, just so that I know 100% that I've done it. If I rely on having done it before I go out from storage, it may be 6 months. I may think I've done it, and then I'm out camping for a little while, and it's pretty obvious from the odor that I haven't done it. And you can catch up. You can always catch up. If you get a little odor, add more chemical. You can never put too much RV chemical in your toilet. It becomes less cost effective, but you can never ruin the system. In fact, I could put this whole jug in there. All it would do would be digest that much faster. Wouldn't be the best way to spend my money, but it would just digest faster. Speaking of digesting, wow, that may have been an unintentional pun. What I meant was the way that the paper breaks down. I promise that's what I meant. But yeah, you use RV tissue. A lot of the old timers will tell you, oh, you can use one-ply biodegradable and that's fine. In a pinch, if you are out somewhere and you cannot find anything but a mom and pop store, yes, you can. Double up your chemical and dump it the second you can. The big reason is that RV tissue is made like pressboard. It's little pieces pressed together. Conventional toilet paper is more like plywood. It's a bunch of strands. So when it breaks down, you get all these strands that can connect the sensors and stuff, can get into the corners, can basically gum up the works, something you don't want. And this is, the toilet area is probably the most unpleasant part to talk about, but it's probably the most important part to keep functioning correctly, because you don't want to have to do repairs on the road on your toilet system.
That's fantastic advice, Dr. Q. I really appreciate. Who would have ever guessed that there'd be some science to the toilet paper you have to use in an RV? But being out on the road before and having my toilet malfunction, I can certainly appreciate why that's important to check before you leave, not once you're out trying to have fun.
Yeah. You want to take care of it. If there is an issue, you want to take care of it before you go. So we're going to move on here into the bedroom area. So what we would do at this point is we would take a look, make sure that all of our cabinet doors, and as we go through, I'm taking a quick look and make sure everything's working, everything's closed, there's nothing hanging off, nothing needs to be reattached. I would take a quick look at my linens. In this case, we're kind of cheating it with our fun 50th anniversary bag there. But a lot of people like to leave pillows, towels, sheets, all of that stuff that stays in the RV and the RV. I just take a quick inventory, make sure everything's clean.
The main issue, I guess, I've encountered is a cabinet that doesn't latch properly. What would be your recommendation in a situation like that?
I would probably go into the travel center and get a replacement of the hardware. So like this one, we were in here yesterday, and I know this one is not. This one I would have a problem with. This one, and it's just a roller catch. They call it a roller catch. Basically, this little guy right here goes between those two right there. And so what's happened is, I'm not sure if this has gotten squished. If I was on the road, I might try to take a hammer and just flatten that a little bit so that these two little angles came out so that I had more surface going between here. But really the best thing to do, when they get tired, the best thing to do is replace them. They're simple, they're $3 or $4, and it saves you a bunch of hassle. So that one just doesn't quite catch, see that? See the difference there? I actually have to force that one open. This one comes right open.
That's great advice. The what I like about going through this stuff with you, Quinn, is that these are things that can oftentimes cause headaches on the road. We're trying to take care of the headaches before we take off. And I'll grant the fact that this may sound a little bit patronizing to somebody who's been RVing for a long time. I think our target is really those folks who have just purchased a new RV to them, even if it's a used RV, or those who are new to RVing in general. These are the tricks that our experts can help you save time and frustration with. So what else you got?
All right, so the next thing I would do is I would go ahead and just sweep out, make sure everything's good and clean. This is a fun little adjustable brush. RVs, no matter how big they are, space becomes an issue. So they make all kinds of fun little collapsible things. So I'm just going to sweep my way out, just make sure that everything's good and clean at this point. As I go through, I'm going to check, make sure that everything, as I said, is working. All my lights are working in here. I'm good. All my lights work down the hall. I'm going to take a quick look at my vents as I go through. I want to make sure that those vents are closed. If I don't have max airs on them, driving them down the road with them open can actually do damage to the lid. You can lose a lid. And then the very last thing I would do is I would make sure that everything is out of the way so that when I bring my slide out in, nothing is in its way. We forgot to mention, this is a really good multi-purpose cleaner. We discovered this year. It really works well out there. And this way you only have to bring one bottle with you. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my good...
What's it called? What's it called?
Oh, the Solution. It's called the Solution. It's the world's best waterless car wash and protectant, but it works all over on all kinds of surfaces. So it actually can be used interior.
Cool.
So I'm going to take all of my stuff on the counters. I'm going to stash it all. I'll work my way forward. I would bring the slide room in, and then the very last check is I'm going to start my vehicle and make sure I don't have any check engine lights or anything on, and we're ready to go have a good time.
Of course, the thing I've encountered before is I've been moving my slide out in, and it's gotten caught on something. How does a guy avoid that?
You're going to want to basically just take a quick visual check. Often it's the captain's chairs, depending on where the slide is. The captain's chairs will rotate. They'll spin so that you can sit looking into the living area. Make sure they're in the forward-facing position, and that the back is up, basically. The other thing is you're going to just take a quick look on either end of the slide out across the front. Okay, nothing's in my way. We're going to bring that rascal in. You want to do the same thing when you're putting it out. I know we did the exterior last time, but when you're running your slide out, it's good to have somebody on the outside just in case you've forgotten about a tree limb that you can't see through the windows.
Well, that's fantastic. So, in summary, I believe we've completed part 2 here of our pre-trip checklist. We went through all of our gray, black, propane tanks, tested our water pump. We double-checked that we had the right supplies to go on our trip with the correct RV-grade toilet paper, that we've got the right enzymes. What do we call the Happy Camper? Is it...
It's an enzyme or a bacteria-based, so it's just little granules. As I said, you dilute them in water, and they go in and they digest whatever is biodegradable in that tank. And you can use that in your gray water, too. A lot of people forget that you get some smell from gray water.
Oh, good. Can't use too much of it. We recommend Happy Camper. It's available at the RV Travel Center and many RV stores in your local area as well. And then we kind of double-checked our door latches to make sure nothing was going to fall out, that they were latching correctly. We cleaned off our counters before we took off, so nothing came falling down. Double-checked that our refrigerator doors were locking correctly, so we didn't have beverages spilling out. Then we made sure our slides were in without hitting our captain's chair. And then the last thing, we didn't demonstrate it, but you would, of course, want to do is check the engine, turn it on, make sure you don't have any hazard lights on. And that completes the interior trip check before you hit the road. Be sure, I think of all the things we discussed, whether it was in our previous episode, part 1, or here in part 2, just because your tires have lots of tread does not mean that they're safe. You need to check for mildew or cracking along the sidewalls. That's probably, to me anyway, from what you recommended, Quinn, probably the best indicator of whether or not we're going to be safe on the road.
Yeah, everything else is a bummer. A blown tire can be disastrous.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, from all of us at Guaranty RV Super Centers in Junction City, Oregon, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any comments or questions whatsoever during the live stream or even after the fact, we post these to YouTube afterwards. Happy to answer them. That's what we're here for. So thank you very much again, and look forward to seeing you 2 Fridays from now at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That would be August 19th, I believe. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.